Welcome to the Franchise Secrets Podcast with your host, Erik Van Horn. And today's guest is Chris DeJong, and he's the founder of Big Blue Swim School. It's going to be an interesting conversation today because there's a lot of founders of different franchises out there, and you hear me talk about it a lot on bringing in people that have experience in franchise and having them become part of the team. And he did just that with a group that started out as a multi-unit owner of franchises, and then they eventually invested into Big Blue as a private equity group, and now they're growing that together in that partnership. So we want to dive into that. There's some really unique things around technology that I find fascinating with Big Blue and what they do for you as the franchisee. And I think the great franchisors are looking at it from the standpoint of what can I take off of the plate of the franchisee and what should they be focusing on so it's a win-win relationship for everybody. So Chris, let's go back to the beginning. Like Big Blue Swim School, I'm sure it didn't evolve like when you were, initially learning how to swim. You have a career in swimming. I used to swim competitively until I blew out my shoulder. So give us the story.
Yeah, thanks, Erik. So great to be here with you today. I was a competitive swimmer since I was about 7 years old. And, swimming's just always been in my blood. My dad sold boats at the local marina growing up, and my mom was a local swim instructor. And I spent almost every day, either at the beach or at the pool growing up. So I've just always been a swimmer. And so towards the end of my competitive swimming career, I started teaching swim lessons just as a way to make ends meet. And eventually that grew into a viable business. Started teaching swim lessons whenever I could get pool time, and had a real love and passion for sharing, the gift of swimming with kids. And before I knew it, we had formed Big Blue Swim School. Started that in 2009 in Chicago.
So how did Big Blue,
growing ever since.
When did that come to be? Well, let's even go back further than that. Give us some bragging, a little bit on yourself. Like, you probably just didn't, swim a little bit here and there. I know I used to swim a lot, and I was never at the level that you were. So give us an idea of like what competitive swimmers actually go through in their training process.
Yeah, it's a pretty intense sport as far as the commitment level. You're working out 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening, plus a dry land workout. So either biking or running or weight room or core. And you're probably doing that on Saturday, possibly Sunday as well. So it's a very demanding sport. I was fortunate enough to have a lot of really great coaches and teammates along the way. I was on the U.S. national team for 9 years, competed in a couple different international events, and was captain of the University of Michigan swim team my senior year there. Narrowly just missed the U.S. Olympic swim team in 2004 and 2008. From that disappointment really is what kind of grew this desire to do something new and do something big. And that's how we started teaching swim lessons, my wife and I. Take us back to that moment, like when you didn't make it that second time, and you probably would never have seen yourself where you are today and the success that you've had. But like you were that's probably like one of your lowest points, I would imagine. And all the effort and everything that went into that. And then Big Blue was born out of that. So what was that really like? Yeah, that's you're absolutely right. It was hugely disappointing at the time, and I still felt like I had so much to give, but at the same time, you kind of know when it's over from a competitive standpoint as an athlete. So I just had to find a new way to pour myself into a new passion, and starting a business turned out to be that for me. And it's been a similar journey. There's been a lot of ups and downs over the last 10 years of starting and owning and operating a business. So a lot of the same lessons taken out of my competitive swimming career, I think, are actually pretty applicable to the business world today. So I'm really grateful for everything that I learned along the way in my swimming career. the great times and also the disappointing times, because I think that they, without those, I don't think I would be successful today in business. One of my favorite sayings is, it's okay to give up 1,000 times as long as your feet never stop moving. I really think toughness is measured in your resilience. And if you don't have resilience, you're going to probably not be a business owner for very long, because there's
how much of that's the mental game?
I mean, it's huge. And I also think that it's not just the mental game. It's primarily, how can you find ways to relax and recover and gain perspective when no one else around you seems to have it, or when the circumstances around you don't allow for you to take a breath. That's really key, I think, to keep pushing.
So many people just go and go and go, and they never take time to, in sports, it's recovery, right? Or sleep, or, things that don't seem like they're moving the needle forward, but in actuality, they do move the needle forward. And in business, for us entrepreneurs, you have to have that time of reflection. You have to have that time to take a step back to see the big picture. Otherwise, you're just going, and you really don't have the direction that you could have if you were looking at it from 10,000 feet, right?
You're absolutely right. It's not just about going. Anybody can go hard for a short period of time. It's, how do you go hard? How do you go hard intelligently and for a long period of time? And I think that's really what separates successful ventures and unsuccessful projects.
So you said your wife were teaching lessons, started Big Blue. Like, what did the first Big Blue swim school look like?
Well, we started just building a lesson base by renting pool time wherever we could find it. It wasn't until 2012, so 3 years in, that we raised funds to build out our own pool. And that was in Wilmette, just north of Chicago. So it was really just scraping by. I mean, we had $0 in our bank account when we started. And we slowly built that up to a weekly lesson base of about 600 kids.
And was this all using other people's pools?
Yeah, that was all using other people's pools, signing leases, getting pool time, usually at odd times too, like late on a Friday night, or 4 o'clock on a Sunday. We just took what we could get. We really did get the scraps of pool time around the Chicago area, but that's what you got to do to get started.
100%. So you were making it work, using or working around other people's schedules, which is not easy. I'm sure there's communicating with customers that's difficult. I mean, there's a lot of complexity to that. So you had the idea, I'm going to build my own facility, own pool, which is not cheap to do. So how did you go about raising money for that, and eventually just even pulling the trigger? Because it's real safe having 600 kids just renting a pool. I'm sure it's not safe going and building your own.
Yeah, it totally changed the business. We literally went from 600 kids to 2,200 kids in the span of a week when we opened up our own facility. So the business model proved itself out, but up until that point, it took a lot of convincing. It took a lot of meetings with a lot of potential investors to convince them that, hey, this is a viable business model, and we know what we're doing. They say, the harder you work, the luckier you get. So there's been a lot of hard work, but also quite a bit of luck, I would say, that has gone into getting us to where we are today. One of the first girls I gave a swim lesson to when I moved to Chicago, she was, I believe, 7 years old at the time. And I started to, develop a relationship with the family. They would come religiously every week. They were just, awesome to work with, really down to earth, nice people. It wasn't until about a year in that I found out that her dad was in the process of buying the Chicago Cubs at the time. So as they just started to really become more and more appreciative of the swim lessons they were getting, they realized the potential, and they became some of our early investors as well in Big Blue Swim School. So like I said, a lot of hard work, obviously, but a little bit of luck helps too.
So there's a lot of different swim schools out there that, are real small, and there's some that are, like what you guys are doing and everything in between. Give the listeners a sense of what Big Blue is and what it isn't.
Well, since we built our first standalone location in 2012, we have only been expanding through our own pools, no longer renting pool time. We're really all about making a great experience for customers. And you just can't produce a great experience for customers when you're renting someone else's pool. You can't control the temperature, you can't control the water quality, and you can't control the hours of operation. So we have now 5 corporately owned locations in Chicagoland. And then we started selling franchises about a year ago. We have 45 units sold, and we should be opening up our first location here early next year. So Big Blue Swim School, though, we really, I think, stand alone in that we understand our customer. And so whether it's building technology to make swim lessons fit into their lives very easily because parents are busy, or just making sure we've got that 90-degree water so kids can be comfortable and not chattering their teeth when they're trying to learn how to swim. Or if it's just building a comfortable facility that takes families into account. So an air-conditioned viewing room for mom or dad to relax in during their swim lesson, individual showers, individual changing rooms. We really want to make sure that the customer feels comfortable and that we're a very easy to use experience because we know people will come and take a swim lesson from us if they get that repeatedly every time.
So what age do they start, and when have they outgrown Big Blue?
Well, I mean, we start swim lessons as early as 6 months old, but we've got kids who continue to swim with us even after they've learned to swim, but just continue to swim as an activity up until 12 years old. We're one of the few swim schools out there that offers learn to swim, but also swimming as an activity on a large scale. So families who typically have 2 or more kids, roughly 36 months apart, can continue to swim with us, not only for a longer period of time as their oldest child is aging out of most learn to swim programs, but also swimming at the same time. So 2, 3 siblings, even though they're at different levels, can come swim with us at the same time. A lot of that's because of how we build our pools, and a lot of that is because of how we've invested in technology to make that really easy for our team members and our customers to schedule those lessons at the same time.
So let's start with the pool, because I mean, you and I both swam, 25 and 50 meters or yards wherever we were. Yeah. And like there's, 8 lanes. Like what does a pool look like at Big Blue?
Yeah. So it's smaller than your typical competitive pool. It's about 30 feet wide. The length of the pool will vary, but primarily the kids are swimming either 15, 30 feet across a pool in their lesson. And some of the older kids are going to be swimming the long way of the pool. So in some cases, 60 to 75 feet. And it's only about 4 feet deep, right? And then, like I said, we keep the water at 90 degrees. We keep the air at 90 degrees. It's specifically for teaching swim lessons and only teaching swim lessons. We just do that one thing, and we try to do that one thing really well. When you take your 3-year-old to a YMCA or a park district, there's a lot of other things going on at the pool. The water is usually cold, and it can be a little overwhelming for kids to learn how to swim. So I think that if you're really, focused on creating a great experience for your customers in the swim lesson business, you really need to build your own pool. You need to keep it warm. You need to make sure that water quality is always top notch. And that's been a huge part of our success. It's just nailing the pool, nailing the experience inside the 4 walls for families.
And that's just, as a franchisor, that's what you're looking at, right? It's attention to the little things as a franchisor. And I'm sure some of this came from things that, you saw competitors doing wrong, and probably some things that you did wrong or you couldn't do right because, you can't control air and water temp in a rented pool. So why did you decide to go the franchising route versus just do more of your own? I think that's a question that a lot of franchisors today have, because they have a successful business model, whatever it is. It might be like, a large investment like what you have. It might be like a painting company. They have success with it, and they have people coming to them and say, is this a franchise? Well, no. Well, you should franchise it. Plants the seed in their mind. And they're like you were a number of years ago. And, you have a choice to make. Either you go the franchise route or you continue to do what you're doing. So give us some insight into like where your mind was at that time and the pros and cons that you were weighing yourself.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, being able to partner with franchise partners across the country is something I'm really excited about. One of our core values is that none of us is smarter than all of us. So as we continue to build our team out larger and larger, I think we only stand to benefit from the expertise of all the different franchise partners out there. We've already started to see that, bringing in Orange Theory Fitness franchisees into the system, and Planet Fitness franchisees into our system. They bring with them a wealth of experience, not just as operators of their locations, but also in their personal backgrounds. So
that's a great point, because when you have
that much smarter.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you bring in franchisees that have experience in some great brands, and both Orange Theory and Planet Fitness currently are really good brands. And, there's a lot of activity going on in those brands, buying and selling, private equity coming in, buying out franchisees, and franchisees have done very well in both of those brands. They're looking for their next thing. And when they find something that they like, they come with a ton of value to the franchisor, and it's got to be the right fit culturally and all of that, because it's not just about having success in a business, but if there is that culture fit and they know what they're getting into. I mean, you've sold almost 50 units or territories, yet you don't have any open yet. And so for the person, it's a lot harder for the person that doesn't have any experience in business. Maybe they have a high level corporate job and no experience hiring the types of people that you need to hire. But then you get a franchisee that has had multiple units of Planet Fitness or Orange Theory. It's not rocket science for them to go into their next franchise model and partner with the franchisor. So go into that relationship that you have with some of these franchisees, and how they're going to help you build it and how you're going to help them.
Yeah, I see it as a very mutually beneficial relationship, at its best, and that's what it can be. And I think that, another one of our company core values is to make teamwork happen. And that doesn't happen by simply meeting someone halfway. You need to go 90% of the way for them. You need to anticipate what their problems are and help remove those hurdles from their day. And that's the philosophy we take to franchising. We're not just handing off a playbook and saying, good luck, here you go. We don't see franchise fees as a profit source for us. These are simply ways to make sure that we can grow and build the brand together. So things like running the real estate selection process, the construction management process, the technology strategy, and the ongoing local marketing spend. Those are all things we take off of the plates of our franchise partners.
And those are really big things that you just mentioned. I mean, it's easy to say, right? We take the construction and we take, a number of these things off, but construction is a massive time suck for franchisees. And if that's done at, what do you call it? What do you call the headquarters? World headquarters, or what's the name of Big Blue's headquarters?
It's just our corporate office here in Chicago.
So the corporate office takes that off of your plate. I mean, how much? So I know franchisors that they take a lot off of your plate. I mean, they basically hand over the store and say, "Hey, it's time for a grand opening in 3 weeks. Get ready." And they really handle all of that. Others say they handle that, and they really don't. And I've experienced both. And I'm experiencing it right now. A lot of them help you out with a lot of it, but some of the franchisors actually do the construction for you. And it sounds like that's kind of more the model of Big Blue. So what is that specifically for someone that has done it before, and they'd be like, wow, does Big Blue really do all of this? What is that?
Right. And it's not just saying, okay, here's the keys to your store. We're going to be open in 3 weeks. It's partnership long before we open a store and long after we open a store. So bringing franchise partners into the real estate and site selection process and running that for them, but having them be involved partners in the process, showing them the data and the analytics that we use to decide where to place their location, making sure that they understand and they buy into our philosophy on that is key. Because like I said, it truly is a partnership, and we want that to be a healthy partnership for years to come. On the construction side of things, it's not an easy build out to build a pool with a pump room with the HVAC equipment that we have and the pool dehumidification units and getting all that to show up on day one of swim lessons, it's not easy. You know, we're planning the community readiness and the lesson readiness and the team readiness to make sure that, you know, we're ready to hit the ground running. The marketing, the pre-opening marketing playbook that we run on behalf of the franchisee and invest their dollars to get as many members in the door before we open is huge. And they're a part of those planning sessions. They're reviewing the dashboards with us and helping us, you know, best allocate our funds to make sure we open as close or beyond profitable as possible. So it's not just saying, here you go, we're doing this for you. It really is bringing them into the process and to actually just hand off a playbook or say, okay, we've got your franchise fee, now good luck. To me is a recipe for disaster. I can't believe how many brands do that. Still being relatively new to the franchise game myself, I just can't believe that you would try to set somebody up to open up a business as complicated as either selling swim lessons or whatever it is you do, and expect your franchise partners to be able to handle all of that for the first time and do it effectively. You know, the long-term brand growth is way too important for them and for us to leave that to chance. So that's part of the reason why we've taken the approach that we have. And I think that, you know, the more I learn about franchising, the more I learn that it's just not that common. And it somewhat is very surprising to me.
Well, it's interesting because you had the background in being an owner of Big Blue, and you didn't have the franchising background or experience. And I say this a lot to people when they come to me and they're wanting to buy a franchise and they're like, you know, tell me what they want. And I looking at, you know, these different brands that I work with, I'm wondering, you know, one of the things that I look at in a brand is that they have the franchisor has franchisor experience somewhere in their leadership team and industry experience. And so you went and brought in the franchise experience. Like, tell us about that decision-making process and who they are and what that relationship looks like. Yeah.
So we really did spend the last 10 years, I think, perfecting the four-wall experience inside the box, if you will. But then when we looked at franchising, we had built 5 pools previously, and we've done, I think, some pretty good marketing. But bringing in level 5 capital partners almost 3 years ago was a hugely successful move for us. And they brought in a ton of franchising experience. They were the largest franchisee of Core Power Yoga, and they're now investing in a few other brands. They're based in Atlanta, and they've been a tremendous partner for us. I've heard a lot of horror stories out there of companies bringing in private equity and not working out in everyone's favor. This has been, a tremendous partnership for us. Mainly because, like I said before, we're a values and mission driven company, and we take that into every meeting, every relationship. We're very transparent with that. I think it's been a big part of the reason why this level 5 Big Blue Swim School partnership has been so successful.
Well, so they have experience as a franchisor. I mean, that's a lot of Core Power Yogas to own, and they did it as a group. What are some of the things that bringing them in, those guys over there, and I know some of them, what have they taught you? Like, what are some of the things that they've shortened the learning curve, or they saved you money or time or headaches?
Right. Well, for one, just bringing in such a data-driven approach to site selection. And the entire business as a whole, but really on the real estate side of things, not guessing on where to go put a store. It's a very thorough process of evaluating a market down to the trade area, down to the intersection. It was really impressive to see how they've done that. And so that was cool to see. And then being able to say, okay, here's they've got a construction manager in-house. They're going to competitively bid every project to keep costs low. And they had that just down to an absolute science, just every step of the process mapped out with check boxes. It was so great to see, because we had kind of just gone through it the first couple of times building a pool and made a lot of mistakes. These guys had a tried and true process and system that had worked out well for them in the past. So that was really a huge benefit to be able to just go leverage that expertise. And then just from a franchise sales and franchise operation perspective, they have a lot of experience in that area as well. So our new franchise operations director, Justin Waltz, he's been, just an incredible resource of learning about franchising. I feel like I basically have majored in franchising, like gone back to college, just hanging out with Justin the last few months and learning so much about so much that I didn't know. But I did know that when we built a great four-wall experience, if we wanted to go do it well nationally and do franchising the right way, it was beyond what we could possibly do ourselves. So we knew we needed to get smarter, and we knew we needed to partner with the right people to help us do that. And so far, it seems like we've made the right decision.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about those guys over there. And then, I'm in that boutique fitness space as a franchisee myself. And so you just learn a lot opening up location after location after location. And, and then you take that experience and you can transfer that to, a different business, whatever the service is or the product. And you can, if you've learned it once, you can take it and help other people grow faster, which is exactly what they're doing. Is it just money that they bring to the table with some advice, or is it connections? And what does a month look like? Do you have a meeting once a month with the leadership team? And, I'm just trying to get an idea of what that looks like. So other people, whether they're thinking about going that route, bringing in somebody like a Level 5 or different private equity group, like what have you seen that you really appreciated about them, and or maybe something that you glad they didn't do?
Well, it's definitely more than money, and they're pretty involved in even the day-to-day operations. Right now is very involved in the strategy of how to expand and grow the franchise enterprise. I speak with them literally every day. Like I said, our management team and their management team are pretty mixed at this point. So we've blended the two cultures, and it's been one of those things that's worked out really well. A lot of times it doesn't, though. And I think that's probably rooted in just a lack of trust. We built the trust from the very beginning. They've learned from us, we've learned from them. And we've kept a very open mind, and we've continued to live by our mission and values. And whenever something comes up that is not easily understood, you can always come back to your mission, come back to your values, and say, hey, either you're on board or you're not, and let's find a way to move forward together. So it all comes down to people management at the end of the day, and it's an art as much as it is a science. And I've learned a lot from them on that front. So that's been really great to see in action and to learn from that. So Level 5 hopefully will be around with Big Blue Swim School for a long time to come.
So how have they helped you, or maybe what are some of the things that you've did for your first hires, or advice that you would give a new franchisor on, make sure you kind of hire this type of person or for these types of roles? What kind of advice would you give yourself, 5 years ago, if you could do that?
I mean, go back to your previous question. Yes. I mean, just their network has been valuable as far as expanding our team. They bring so much more expertise than I could possibly have brought from a professional swimming career when it comes to finding the right VP of marketing hire, or the right, HR director, things like that. They bring in a lot of expertise that, just most business owners, if you've really focused on developing a great experience for your customers, you just haven't had time to develop those skill sets. So, I think that's been something I realized early on, and sometimes that's hard for a business owner to do, is say, hey, I don't know everything. But if you come to the table with the right amount of humility, you're much more likely to make the right decisions when trying to surround yourself with the smartest people in the room. And I never claim to always immediately be the smartest person in the room, but I think if I have one talent, it's that I can usually recognize first who is the smartest guy in the room. And so, leaning on that ability has been something that it's been a big part of my success, I think, personally. And I think something that all business owners need to lean into that skill and recognize that a lot of times you aren't the subject matter expert. You need to know who to listen to and when to listen to them, and when not to, because everybody's bringing something different to the table. But if you are able to embrace everyone's strengths and the diversity of opinion, that's when a team really starts to take off and become a loyalist team.
What are some of the things on the horizon? Like, you have your first franchisee location is it in construction right now, going to open up next year? Is that right?
We actually just signed our first lease on a franchise location in Denver. And so we'll also be opening in Atlanta and DC, hopefully next year.
That's great. And so what do you see in the future for Big Blue? I mean, you're just getting started. You have a great team, and you've got, your first franchisees that are opening up. I mean, they've been rock stars in other brands, and I know about one of them. I don't know about the other, but I would imagine that they are going to prove to be very good franchisees and a very good first location open up for you. And it's in a great market as well in Denver. Like what are you expecting out of that? Like how that first location for a new franchisor is extremely important. Like, what do you like? I'm sure it's causing you some not sleepless nights, but just some anxiety because it is the first one. So how important is that first one to you?
I mean, it's extremely important. Every location we ever open up is going to be, so important to the brand. If you have one bad location, it can really affect the reputation of the brand and the experience for the franchise partners. So we're really looking forward to opening up this first franchise location, and our goals are to open up literally hundreds of these across the country over the next few years. I think it's really telling that there's already a lot of swim schools out there that are successful, but there is not a whole lot of sophistication in the industry yet. There's a ton of white space. It's always been difficult to build a pool. And because of that, there's still a tremendous opportunity out there nationwide to build a swim school and to possibly see the swim school industry go the same route as boutique fitness over the last 10 years. And so as we do that, I think that sky's really the limit for us. This is a great business to be in, and that it's a need. We tell people you can't own the power company, but you can own the swim lesson company. It's something that families have to have. At an increasing rate, parents are realizing that swim lessons are a must. Right. And these also cannot be automated. They can't be outsourced. So this is a recession resistant business model. I started Big Blue Swim School in 2009 in the Midwest. It's been pretty proven that parents are going to spend money on their children. So you take a really healthy unit economic model and you combine it with the passion that we have for what we're doing here in swim lessons, with the expertise that we have developed over the last 10 years. In an industry with a ton of white space, like I said, I really think the sky is the limit for this brand.
Well said. Any last bits of advice or wisdom for anybody listening out there? Maybe they're a new franchisor, maybe they're thinking about buying a franchise, or they're they just they're listening to you and they're like, I wish I could get some advice from him. Like, what kind of advice would you give the new franchisee and the new franchisor?
Yeah, I mean, as someone who's never been a franchisee, I would tell folks that are looking at different concepts out there, really probe what it is that you're being promised. When and how is it going to be delivered? Who is going to be delivering it? Can you get a schedule from them on when those things are going to happen? Because I've seen a lot of promises get made out there without the intention of actually following through. And so, look at choose a brand that's right for you and your values and something you're going to be passionate about, not simply a portfolio diversification for yourself. So from a franchisor perspective, again, I think you really have to look at this as a partnership. Like I've said, people who are willing to to buy into your business, you should see them every bit as important as the coworker you sit next to every day in the office. It's a long-term relationship that ideally will last longer than most marriages last. So really, get to know each other and make sure that you like working with each other, because life's just way too short to do anything otherwise. And it's pretty unrealistic to think that it's going to work out successfully if you hate each other. So make sure that you can work with each other from the very beginning.
I think that's excellent advice. Good summary. And I can tell, just by your actions, not your words, what you've done and how you've built this, is that team is, part of who Big Blue is, part of who you are. And I love not being the smartest guy in the room. I'm rarely the smartest guy in the room. Only in the franchise space, in a small little segment, am I, one of the smartest guys in the room. But I don't, I try to get out of that room as much as I can to be around other high level, high performing people that push me out of my comfort zone. And then there's always good things that come out of that. So I'm a huge believer in that as well. So thanks for coming on the show, and look forward to seeing where Big Blue is going in the next few years.
Thanks so much, Erik. I had a great time.